Namaste and good morning, India. Welcome to your daily update where we connect the dots on the stories that matter. This is calm, clear, and factual news. Namaskar.
When you scroll through the news in the morning, it can feel like you're getting hit with 100 different things from 100 different directions, right? There's a protest happening over in Kolkata. Then you read about a brand new train line opening up in Kashmir. And then, completely out of left field, there's talk of a major peace summit in Alaska. It all feels totally random, just disconnected bits of information.
But what if they're not random at all? What if each of these headlines is actually a puzzle piece? And if you just turn them the right way and click them together, they form a much bigger picture. Well, that's exactly what we're going to do today. We are going to be your guide, putting all these pieces together to show you the big picture of a nation that is constantly, and I mean constantly, in motion. So let's dive in.
All right, first up, let's talk about India on the move. And this is a story with two sides. It's about the incredible momentum we see in building things up, but also, at the exact same time, things breaking down. And here is that exact contrast, side by side. On the one hand, you have these huge historic wins. I mean, a freight train reaching the Kashmir Valley for the very first time? That's not just a railway line, that's like a new steel artery pumping economic blood into the heart of the region. We've got a shiny new Vande Bharat Express connecting Amritsar and Katra, and a new highway down in Tamil Nadu. This is progress you can literally drive on. But then look at the other side of the coin. The monsoon arrives, and it's like a stress test that our infrastructure keeps failing. A wall collapses in Delhi with tragic consequences. 400 roads, 400 are shut down in Himachal. It's like we're a student acing the advanced exams but failing the basics. We are building up and breaking down, all at once. Now, let's talk about another kind of building up. Take a look at this number. 1,50,590 crore rupees. Just let that sink in for a second. This absolutely staggering figure is India's annual defense production. It is a record, an all-time high. And whenever you see a number this big, you know it's going to spark a really important conversation.
And that conversation leads us directly to this. Of course, a strong, self-reliant defense is something nobody would argue with. It's crucial. But this record spending forces us to ask some tough questions about our national priorities. As you can see here, our defense budget is now over 5 times larger than our education budget. This is the textbook guns versus butter debate playing out right in our national balance sheet. So are we celebrating a massive achievement in national security, or is this a moment where we need to stop and think about where our money is really going?
This economic motion is creating some interesting shifts at the ground level too. You have ICICI Bank raising its minimum balance requirement to 50,000 rupees in big cities. It's a clear business move, right? They're filtering for customers with more capital. At the very same time, you have the government of Rajasthan doing something amazing, sending 100 farmers overseas to learn about the latest agricultural technology. It's a fantastic investment in skills, but you see the connection? Both stories are about placing strategic bets. One is a bet on high net worth individuals, the other is a bet on upgrading skills from the ground up. It shows an economy that is changing and figuring out who it wants to invest in for the future.
So we've seen all the motion happening inside India. But of course, India doesn't exist in a bubble. So now, let's zoom out and look at the global chessboard. This is where India has to perform some really delicate balancing acts, walking a diplomatic tightrope every single day. This slide really says it all about India's foreign policy. On one side, you see our growing friendship with the United States and its allies, a seat at the Western table. But look at the other side. Prime Minister Modi is preparing to visit China for the SCO summit, a group that includes both Russia and China. And this is huge because it's his first trip there since the Galwan clashes in 2020. This is what experts call multi-alignment. It's basically making sure you have a seat at every important table, even if the people at those tables don't always get along. You keep all your options open.
And speaking of balancing acts, this is a masterclass in what's called the strategic signaling. The Indian Air Force recently declassified the details of a very successful operation from back in May, where they downed 6 Pakistani aircraft. Okay, big news. But here's the zinger, the most important part of the announcement. They made a point to publicly credit the Russian-made S-400 missile systems for the success. Now think about that. At a time when the US is putting pressure on India not to buy Russian weapons, this is a very polite but very firm way of saying, see, this is why we bought it, because it works. It's a message sent to multiple capitals at once.
And all of this complex diplomacy is guided by a principle that you've probably heard before from Prime Minister Modi himself. This is not an era of war. This single sentence has become the foundation for India's response to another major global development, and that is a potential peace summit between the US and Russia, a meeting that India has now officially welcomed.
The stakes for this meeting are, well, they're sky high. So here's the timeline. India has welcomed the idea of this summit. The meeting itself is planned for mid-August in Alaska between Trump and Putin. And the core proposal that's reportedly on the table? An explosive one. Ukraine cedes its eastern territories to Russia in exchange for peace. By supporting the summit, India positions itself firmly on the side of dialogue and de-escalation, which is very smart diplomacy.
But this immediately brings us to the agonizing, almost impossible question that hangs over this entire proposal. Peace. At what price? How do you weigh the end of a brutal conflict against the fundamental principle of a nation's sovereignty? It's a terrible moral calculation, trading land for lives, and there is absolutely no easy answer.
But while the world debates this brutal calculus, Ukraine's President Zelensky has given his own, very clear, very powerful answer. He has completely rejected any deal that involves giving up territory. And his logic, captured in this quote, is just undeniable. You can't have a wedding without the bride. What he means is, you cannot make a deal about Ukraine without Ukraine. It's a powerful reminder that even in a world of superpowers, a smaller nation can refuse to be just a pawn on the chessboard.
Okay, so after that trip around the global chessboard, let's bring our focus back home. Because a nation that's in motion doesn't just move forward, it also churns within itself. And all this friction, the political clashes, the protests, the debates, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Often, it's the sound of a healthy, vibrant democracy at work. Now, before we get to our next story, I want to introduce a keyword. It's pedagogy. Sounds a bit academic, but it's really simple. It's the method and practice of teaching. It's not just about what gets taught in a classroom, but how it's taught. And as you're about to see, it can be an incredibly powerful political tool.
So here's where that word pedagogy becomes so important. Tamil Nadu has just released its new state education policy, and in it, they are sticking firmly to a two-language formula, Tamil and English. This is a direct rejection of the national policy, which suggests a three-language model. This is the perfect example of politics through pedagogy. The state is using its control over the classroom curriculum to make a powerful statement about protecting its unique cultural and linguistic identity against what it sees as a one-size-fits-all approach from the center.
Next up, we have a political firestorm, and we can break it down into 3 simple steps. Step 1, Rahul Gandhi makes a huge allegation, over 1 lakh fake votes in a Karnataka constituency, and he accuses the Election Commission of being involved. Step 2, the reaction. The BJP immediately demands that he resign from his seat in parliament. And that leads us to step 3, the standoff. The BJP's argument is basically this: if you don't have faith in the fairness of the very electoral process that put you in office, then what moral right do you have to occupy that seat? It's a political battle that strikes at the very core of democratic trust.
Our final story of domestic friction takes us to Kolkata, a protest march held to remember the victim of a brutal and still unsolved murder case unfortunately turned violent. This is such a clear and tragic example of how deep-seated, unresolved grief within a community can boil over and become a serious law and order flashpoint. It's a stark reminder that when people feel that justice has been delayed or denied, that anger has to go somewhere, and sometimes it spills onto the streets.
All right, for our final piece of the puzzle today, we're going to zoom out one last time. We're going from the national to the truly global to look at a planet-sized problem that quite literally connects every single one of us.
So what's with this number, 175? What could that possibly be? Well, it's the number of countries, 175 nations, that are all in one room together in Geneva right now. And they're all there to try and solve one single problem that affects every one of them: plastic pollution.
And what they're negotiating is the world's first ever legally binding treaty on plastic. Now, why are those 2 words, legally binding, so important? Because this isn't just a friendly agreement or a suggestion. A legally binding treaty operates under international law. It means if you sign it,
you are obligated to follow the rules. It gives the agreement real teeth, real power to force change, starting with the goal of cutting the production of new plastic. And that really brings us to our final massive question for the day. Plastic is everywhere. We know this. It's in our oceans, it's in our food, it's in our bodies. After decades of letting this problem grow, the world is finally, collectively, trying to put the plastic genie back in the bottle. The question is, can we? The fate of this treaty, and in many ways, the future health of our planet, really hangs in the balance.
So there you have it. We've connected a lot of dots today, haven't we? From a new railway in Kashmir to a political fight in Delhi, from a summit in Alaska to a treaty negotiation in Geneva. It all looks random at first, but when you step back, you can see the threads connecting them all. Our goal is to always help you find that bigger picture in the daily noise.
Our ability to deliver this kind of calm, clear analysis is thanks to listeners like you. For just ₹1 per day, you help us stay ad-free and independent, so we can focus solely on the facts. If you value this approach, please subscribe. And if you found this explainer helpful, please share it with your friends. And remember to follow us on Spotify and YouTube to listen to this podcast every morning at 8 a.m. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back right here tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Until then, keep smiling. Namaskar.